This Week 13 recap here at the 17th season of Blood, Sweat, and Beers is brought to you by the letter X. Well, the second to the last week here at the 17th season is behind us, and everybody gets a letter. X's being the most popular. We got 5 of those. 4 E's were handed out. And, well, Seth Mike just jumped ahead of the X's, went right to a Y and a Z, which really is ideal. Those are the best letters to have. Why not just a P for playoffs? I mean, E for eliminated. What does the X stand for? Anyway, let's take a look back and see just how it all went down and where we end up with the table for the playoffs already being set with a week left. With really just where you're sitting left to be determined. Our first game that we look at, Joe versus your Kamish. Kamish is having a nice little 3-game run right now. It's kind of nice going into the playoffs. This is exactly what you want. You want to get there, and then once you do, you want to make sure that your team is actually able to show up. You don't want to back into the playoffs. We've seen that happen, and it's not great. But your Kamish, based almost entirely on Bijan and the Patriot defense, was able to get the win from the number 2 team in the West. Joe, I guess, live by the Rams, die by the Rams, right? They didn't do badly, but they didn't do very well either. They didn't do great, and there just wasn't enough support around. And in fact, if you look at the potential for the best scorer, he nearly hit the 100%, which is not great because it still would have been 30 points short, even at the best. Kamish had some points left on his bench, as has been his way all season long, unfortunately, but enough in the starting lineup for this week. And, with Joe's loss, he all but kills his chance at taking the number 1 spot in the West and potentially even the number 1 overall, because even though he may match Champ's record here with this last game of the season, there is no way he's catching him. He's got 140 points to make up, so I don't think he's going to score 140 more than Aaron this coming week. So he's locked into the second spot in the West, which locks him into the number 3 spot overall. So not too shabby. We'll see if which one of his teams shows up in the first round of the playoffs. Our next game, we've got our number 1 in the East versus our number 5 in the West. And this is pretty much what we expected it to be. A solid wide receiver performance from Seth Mike's team, 20s and whatnot all the way around. Even on his bench, he's got some points left that he could have thrown in there as well. Not all of them were super usable. He had over 100 points on his bench, but obviously he's got some options going through. Hoffman was already out a couple weeks ago, but wasn't quite good enough to play spoiler. And the first stays first, and the last stays last. As we look at our next game, Alex Billy and the Champ. Well, this was kind of an interesting one. Not really what we expected, especially after Alex Billy pointed out that Amon-Ra St. Brown went out immediately after starting the game, laid a goose egg on that one. You go in and beat the Champ with 1 receiver tied behind your back? That's pretty impressive. And not just barely beat either. I mean, that was a pretty significant, 23 points is not nothing. So that was a nice win for Alex Billy. Champ certainly was not getting Njigba with it this time. Unfortunately, that for him did not work out. And even if you see what was possible, both managed their roster fairly well. It's just another stumble from the Champ, which was kind of interesting, right? Second stumble in 3 games, last 3 games. So it gives the rest of us at least some hope, maybe a fighting chance as we all start to push, or those with their X's, Y's, or Z's, start to push for that championship Pilsner. Roster management is going to become much more important after this weekend. So let's look at Pancho and Don Chris. This was this is not a great game. came down to the Monday night game, but really had very little implications on the playoffs. Both Pancho's already eliminated. Now Don Chris is eliminated as well. Unfortunately for Pancho, that's his second straight game under 100. And we look at the roster management there. Neither one of them did very well with their roster management. I mean, even leaving Saquon on the bench, Pancho easily could have squeezed out another 10 points to try to get that win. But I guess maybe it doesn't really matter once you're eliminated from the playoffs. It really only matters if you lose out through the consolation bracket. So maybe he's resting up for that. But whatever. Anyway, Don Chris almost became our second upside down roster team for this week. 16 tenths of points, 1600ths. 0.16 was the difference between his starting roster and his bench. And if you add his IR player who was actually active and scored points, he had more points sitting than he played. That probably more or less sums up his season. So they will both be fighting to not relinquish their naming rights next season. Our final game, which we touted it last week as the most important game of the season, it went fairly much the way we thought it was going to. It was the closest game of the week, which was kind of interesting. Ian almost snuck up on Keith and kept his playoff hopes alive. If only he had trusted his buddy Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz in the tight end spot easily gives him the win since he was less than 4 points from the win anyway. He didn't trust, so his playoff hopes are dead. He is officially eliminated from the playoffs. But he posted the highest losing score of the week, so I guess that's a moral victory, which, as I've mentioned before, you know exactly how far those go. So either way, Keith is in, Ian's out, and we know that, especially because Kamish and Alex Billy won their games, that locked in all of the invites for the playoffs. So very exciting. As we look over at the standings, letters for everybody. Everybody has a designation going in. The West sends 4 of 5, which is pretty impressive. The only thing left to decide is who sits where, who's dancing with whom in that first round. Honestly, 1, 2, and 3 are locked in. And so for the rest of us, where would you prefer to be? Do you want to be at number 6, where you're playing Joe, who can put up 200 points? But then you get to play, if you get past him, you get to play Seth Mike, who doesn't have quite the firepower? Or do you want to be at the 4 or 5 spot, and then if you get past the 4 or 5 guy, then you got to play the champ, who has been a juggernaut up until the last couple of weeks? Frankly, I don't even think it really matters. I'm not sure which one it makes a difference. We're going to be there, and we'll see what happens. So the games this weekend, there is no single most important game. They really just comes down to the 4, 5, and 6 spots of who's going to play whom. And I don't know if any of you guys, I guess it would be either Alex, Billy, or Keith. I don't know if you guys have a preference on who you play. I don't. I'm just happy to be there. So we'll see how it all turns out this week. But either way, we know who's there and who's got a fighting chance still. So we look at our stats. Here's our 1 through 10, same as it's been for quite a while now. Looking at the points scored, last year's champ, your reigning champion, only needs 54 points this week to become the highest scoring team of the Blood, Sweat, and Beers League. 54 points to set the new single season scoring record. I would not bet against him on that one. We look at points against. That gap continues to widen. It's about 32 points from between poor Hoffman and Seth Mike. Seth Mike still scored some points, but again, benefited greatly from being the leader in points, fewest points against, which is, if you can ride that out for the rest of the playoffs, you'll be in great shape, man. We'll see. We look at our pop. Well, Joe ends up the only guy that gets to stay above 90%. Good job, buddy. Even though he lost, that 99.5 was enough to keep him in the lead for best roster management of the year. But everybody stays above 80, so for whatever that's worth. If we look at our power rankings, absolutely no change from last week. Kind of disappointing, but yeah, I guess we're pretty much locked in, and I'm guessing there will be very few changes going into our final week. So enjoy this week. That doesn't mean very much. It means nothing to the players that are eliminated. It means nothing to your leaders of the East and the West divisions. It means nothing to Joe in second place in the West and third place overall, which is really good because some of those late season bye weeks are going to be painful for a couple of us. But enjoy week 14.